This is the Capital Rundown.
Obviously, there's Canadian steel, Canadian workers, but also U.S. steel, U.S. workers.
Knee-jerk reactions, right? This year it's literacy. Next year, what's going to be the flavor of the year?
We have a president that has broken that trust, and we now have to repair it.
It's all straight ahead. The Capital Rundown starts now.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Jorma Duran. From Lansing to Washington, D.C., there's always a lot happening in Michigan politics, so let's get started. And the White House possibly interfering with a big Michigan project is where we begin today. On Monday, President Donald Trump threatened to block the opening of the new Gordie Howe Bridge. That will be another connection between Detroit and Windsor, Canada. The president is demanding that Canada turn over at least half of the ownership of the bridge and agree to other unspecified demands. The bridge project was negotiated by former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, a Republican, and paid for by the Canadian government. It's meant to help ease congestion over the existing Ambassador Bridge and Detroit-Windsor Tunnel. Work began in 2018 and it's expected to open this year. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says he talked to the president about the demands.
We discussed the bridge. I explained that Canada, of course, paid for the construction of the bridge, over $4 billion, that the ownership is shared between the state of Michigan and the government of Canada, and that in the construction of the bridge, obviously there's Canadian steel, Canadian workers, but also U.S. steel, U.S. workers.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford was more direct in his take on the situation. He told reporters that this isn't the time to, quote, roll over for President Trump.
Keep saying that we've taken advantage of the Americans, contrary to what I believe in. It's the other way around, but we want a strong relationship with our closest friend and ally, and we're going to continue moving forward. But you got to ignore all the rhetoric.
Premier, While speaking at an event in Sterling Heights on Tuesday, Republican Senate candidate Mike Rogers said President Trump is looking for leverage to prevent Canada from sending Chinese-made cars into the United States. Democratic Congresswoman Haley Stevens, who is also running for the Senate, said in a statement that the president is playing games with Michigan's jobs and economy. Also in Michigan, the U.S. Justice Department sued the state government to get a hold of voter rolls. On Tuesday, a federal judge for the Western District of Michigan dismissed that lawsuit. In July, the Justice Department requested voter records from the state, including a copy of Michigan's unredacted voter registration list. Michigan's Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson says the demand violates state and federal privacy laws. The DOJ argued that the information was necessary to ensure Michigan was properly maintaining voter registrations. Well, Judge Hannah Jarboe, who is a Trump appointee, ruled that the federal government does not have the authority to demand the information. Well, coming up on the Capitol Rundown, a group of lawmakers, including Alyssa Slotkin, were the subject of a grand jury decision this week. But first, our Capitol correspondent will be here for you with a look at the new state budget process. That story and a whole lot more when we come back. On Wednesday, Governor Gretchen Whitmer's office released her state budget proposal for 2027. The $88.1 billion plan raises some taxes and lowers others. Here's a breakdown with our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic. He talked to the Rundown's Dalen Huff about the budget and more.
It's time to get updated on Michigan politics, and there's nobody better than our own Tim Skubic. Tim, the governor just released her budget proposal for the next year. What are the biggest takeaways, and are there any surprises?
Well, you know, this is the governor's last budget, and it totals, this is kind of a big number, $88 billion, 88 with a B, billion dollars of your tax money. And of course, now the games begin as to how to divvy up that money. The governor has laid out her blueprint, which does include some tax increases to provide health care to the needy under the Medicaid program. She wants to tax higher internet gaming, sports betting. She wants to come after more tobaccos, $1 increase in the tobacco tax per pack, and she wants to tax vaping products. And all of these tax increases, which she say are needed to not only balance the budget but continue essential and critical state services, are DOA, according to the House Republican Speaker, Matt Hall. The schools do get an increase per pupil, about 2.5%. The universities get $1.7 billion that were going to K through 12 education. The governor's putting that money back in higher ed, so that's a good get for them. So there were plenty of winners and losers at the opening bell. The question is, who are the winners and losers at the all-important closing bell somewhere down the road?
And speaking of the governor's job, most people make headlines for announcing they're running, but Republican Kevin Rinke is in the news for a different reason. What have you learned?
Well, if you remember Kevin Rinke, we go back to 2022. He was one of a handful of gaggle of Republicans, all of them clamoring to get the Republican nomination to run for governor. And Kevin Rinke, in his mind, was doing very, very well. In fact, he thought he really was going to win this thing until the weekend before the election. And a guy named Donald Trump, the president of the United States, decided that Tudor Dixon was going to be a better candidate for governor. So he endorsed him. Kevin Rinke finished second and went, well, that was close. But he still had the bug. So he went out and, believe it or not, conducted 111 listening sessions with Michigan voters in the Republican Party to find out in his candidacy what went wrong. What went wrong is the message he was delivering, the congregation was not buying. And that was a message basically of moderation, the need to compromise in politics, and it's not winner take all. That was his message, and basically he said the far right simply didn't like that. And he now has concluded you can't win a Republican primary if you're in the middle and a lot of voters are on the far right. So the answer to the question, is he running for governor? Kevin Rinke will sit this one out. The answer is a resounding no.
And now that the governor has proposed her budget plan, state lawmakers have to meet a summer deadline to come up with their version. The Rundown's David Sackrider has the details on what comes next in the Capitol building.
I'm going to try not to refer to too much of the chaos of last year, but we've learned some lessons.
These are going to be tough decisions, but we're adults, and I hope everybody's plans on working as a responsible adult.
Both House Republicans and Senate Democrats seemed aligned on the Whitmer administration's push to improve literacy rates in her final budget.
I do support the efforts to work on literacy and the numeracy. I think that, our kids have been left behind. I think that we have to get it right.
It is an issue, but I don't want us to have these knee-jerk reactions, right? This year it's literacy. Next year, what's going to be the flavor of the year? Yeah. If we're serious about reforming education, then let's get real about it.
Members of both parties also seemed opposed to the governor's plans to take money from the rainy day fund, but Republicans specifically say they will not approve a new tax this year.
I don't support increases. I think we have to make life more affordable. There is no doubt, but you don't do it by raising more revenue. I think that there is more to cut. I think there's more to restructure. I think we need to position ourselves that we're not reliant on the federal government.
What we saw in last year's budget is that early on the Speaker and the House Republicans did a lot of posturing and a lot of gimmicks. They talked about ways that they could find efficiencies and cuts, and then at the end of the year we ended up having a larger budget last year. So ultimately I think that they have to show their work.
Still ahead, Americans are talking about their hopes in the future, and a new poll shows what they're saying. Plus, a case against one of Michigan's senators was brought to a grand jury this week. That's coming up right after the break. Welcome back. A small group of Democratic lawmakers, including Michigan's Alyssa Slotkin, are in the clear for now. A federal grand jury in Washington declined to indict them following a Justice Department investigation into a video they made urging U.S. troops to resist what they called illegal orders. Our Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson has the details.
This is not a good news story.
No indictment. That was the decision from a federal grand jury in Washington after the Justice Department investigated Democratic lawmakers over a video about illegal orders.
They tried to have us charged and thrown into jail.
The video featured Senators Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin, along with 4 other Democratic lawmakers, urging service members to follow military law and reject orders they believe are illegal.
The president is using our justice system to weaponize against his perceived enemies.
Slotkin says the investigation should concern all Americans.
If the president can do this to us, to sitting senators, who else can he do it to?
All 6 lawmakers have previously served in the military or in intelligence roles.
We've been in war zones for this country. We fought our country's enemies.
Colorado Congressman Jason Crow also appeared in the video.
The Trump Department of Justice tried and failed to indict me and other members of Congress before a grand jury for doing our job.
Lawmakers asked Attorney General Pam Bondi about the investigation during testimony Wednesday, but she didn't address it.
And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about.
As for the case, it remains unclear what specific charges prosecutors presented to the grand jury. Reporting in Washington, Rashad Hudson.
Michigan's other senator, Democrat Gary Peters, was part of a delegation that visited Greenland on Monday. They were there to show support for the Danish territory and push back against President Trump's desire to take it over. Peters traveled with fellow Democratic Senator Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire, Independent Senator Angus King of Maine, and Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska were also there. Together, they said President Trump's comments have damaged the relationship between the NATO allies.
And the people of Greenland are our friends. The people of Denmark are our friends. And when you have friends, you respect that relationship, you trust each other, and that's what we have to do as a country. Unfortunately, we have a president that has broken that trust. I think, in a significant way, and we now have to repair it.
Actor Viggo Mortensen attended the news conference as a member of the audience. He was seen wearing a pin that said, quote, "Greenland is not for sale." Buying the land was one idea floated by President Trump. The White House says America needs to own Greenland for national security reasons. And ahead on the rundown, a group marching from Texas to D.C. just finished their walk and brought a message for all of us. And right after the break, we have the results from a new poll on American optimism. So stay right there. We'll be right back. According to a new poll, Americans' hope for the future has fallen to a new low. That's from a Gallup poll that asks Americans to rate their current and future lives on a scale from 1 to 10. Those who give themselves an 8 or more on the scale are considered optimists. Well, in 2009, the number of Americans who were optimists was about 63%. For 2025, that's fallen to about 59%. Gallup researchers say the biggest drops were among Democrats and Hispanic people. People who are satisfied with things right now was also higher in 2009 at 65% versus 62% last year, but that's not the lowest it's ever been. In 2020, it was about 60%. And we mentioned earlier that Attorney General Pam Bondi testified before Congress on Wednesday. It was the first time she appeared before the House Judicial Committee since the partial release of the Epstein files. Our Washington correspondent Raquel Martin has the story.
What began as any typical congressional hearing devolved into chaos.
You don't tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because
Democrats went toe-to-toe with Attorney General Pam Bondi over the Epstein files.
how many perpetrators are you even investigating?
I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Bondi defended her agency's work. Since December, the Department of Justice has released millions of documents related to Epstein's crimes as required by law.
And Donald Trump signed that law. He is the most transparent president.
Her remarks did little to satisfy Democrats
But a massive cover-up.
and Republican Congressman Thomas Massey. He says the DOJ is not following the law he helped spearhead.
This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
This week, for the first time, lawmakers viewed the files unredacted. He says some names were hidden without explanation.
The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators, fully redacted.
Bondi suggested that was a mistake.
We corrected that within 40 minutes.
And went after Massey personally.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome.
Republicans came to Bondi's defense.
I want to apologize on behalf of my colleagues.
Instead, praising the administration's efforts to bring crime down.
What a difference a year makes.
Well, still to come, a group of Buddhist monks just arrived in the nation's capital. They carried a message all the way from Texas for the rest of us. That story when the Capitol Rundown returns. A group of nearly 24 Buddhist monks arrived in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday for the culmination of their 2,300-mile walk for peace. Crowds welcomed the monks after their spiritual journey that spanned 9 states. In D.C., they visited the Washington National Cathedral in what was billed as a sacred stop for the Stoic monks. They endured harsh weather during parts of their 108-day journey that began in Texas in late October.
We are not walking from Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. to bring you any peace, but to raise the awareness of peace so that you can unlock that box and free it. Let peace bloom and flourish.
Often walking barefoot, the monks also set out to urge Congress to recognize Buddha's birth and enlightenment as a federal U.S. holiday. And if you're interested in getting more political news from Michigan and Washington, we've got just the thing. You can sign up for our Capitol Rundown newsletter. It's just 1 email each week, and you can get it by pointing your cell phone camera at the screen right now. It'll take you to the sign-up page, or you could head to WLNS.com/newsletter. And that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching the Capitol Rundown.